coast to coast.
Yes, it is, and welcome to it. I'm David Lloyd. Kobe Bryant retired this year after 20 seasons with the Lakers, and now another generational icon and a fixture with his team is saying goodbye. For more on that, let's go out to L.A. and my friend Carrie Champion. Carrie, good to see you again.
Good to see you. First, let me handle business first. Welcome back, David. You were missed.
I missed you.
Oh, see?
A lot.
See?
Really?
This is why. This is why we're a great team. All right, so before we get to Duncan, I need to say this. Our top five today is inspired by a huge sale in sports. $4 billion. David, what would you do with $4 billion?
I got 5 answers that we'll reveal that later.
We'll do that a little. Yeah. We'll do that a little bit later. We can discuss that. But first, like you said, we say goodbye to another basketball legend. Tim Duncan retires. We knew there was a possibility, but it has now been confirmed, ladies and gentlemen. In classic low-key style, Tim Duncan gave us a press release. No major announcement, just a press release. There were no quotes or comments from him, but that could never, ever be an issue because it doesn't take away from his all-star career. The first overall pick in the 1997 draft, Tim Duncan was selected by the Spurs, where he spent his entire 19-year career. With Coach Pop and some others, you know them. But first and foremost, we'll have someone who knows him a lot, actually knows him well. He'll tell us all about him. That's Bruce Bowen, his former teammate.
A house will not stand without a solid foundation. I never realized the importance of structure until I became teammates with Tim Duncan. The big fundamental is an example of having the foundation that has led to 5 championships with one organization.
The San Antonio Spurs have won the NBA championship.
But it's not just about the accolades. It's the process of learning, accepting, then teaching others to become better. Learning the NBA game with David, Sean, Avery, TD earned Rookie of the Year, and things changed.
TD, what are we in? On pick and roll, what are we in? We're in heads, let's go.
The Hall of Famer that Pop recognized began to demonstrate all the qualities of the best ever. Wasn't the MVPs or championships, it was the teacher in him starting to take shape in helping others to become future Hall of Famers. By example of selflessness. He saw the big picture and not the Polaroid picture that in time fades away if he made it about him and not team.
You gotta see the ball the whole time.
A teacher understands to let individuals be themselves to allow the artwork to take shape. With a watchful eye, making sure that what once started as creativity is now a masterpiece. Who knows where TD would be without the influence of Pop? Maybe just another good NBA player? But with Pop, the psych major from Wake Forest has become the best ever.
We take his greatness for granted because he does it on such a consistent basis, night after night, year after year.
TD, I salute you, brother. Not just for celebrations in June, but for allowing me to be part of an incredible journey, which could not have happened without you.
So, folks, this turned out to be Tim Duncan's final NBA game. There was no rock star goodbye like Kobe Bryant. Game 6 of the Western Conference semifinals. After struggling in the first 5 games of the series, Duncan scored 19 points, 7 from 14 from the floor in the 113-99 loss to the Thunder. As he left the court, he pointed up to the sky as he got a standing ovation. Because folks really just didn't know whether or not he was going to retire. It was one of these things where you just had to guess. And, of course, we find out today. Here we have one of many tweets. Big Fundamental says, farewell. This is Manu Ginobili. Even though I knew it was coming, I'm still moved by the news. What a huge honor to have played with him for 14 seasons. Thank you, TD. And speaking of those who know him well and play with him, Steven Jackson was Tim Duncan's teammate for parts of 4 seasons and won an NBA title in 2003. He joins us now on the phone. Steven, your reaction to TD's news?
I'm touched, man. I'm emotional about it because me personally, I still feel like he can play. You know, I don't think nobody's really taking care of their body like he has over his career, and you know, I feel like I want him to go out with a championship because he deserves it. I mean, he has 5, but I just want him to go on top. But going out his way is better than anything.
The chemistry on the Spurs team is well known. It's a very selfless team. The players always are putting other people first. So to hear you say that about Tim, it's refreshing to know. Do you think that is something that Coach Pop did, or was something that Tim did for those players over the past 19 years?
Well, I think it was a little bit both. I think Pop knew how to run the team, but he knew that he had the best person, human being, player, all around human that you can build your organization on. And he was one guy that you can touch every guy on that team through. Everybody respected Tim. Tim treated everybody the same. Tim was, even though he's the best power forward, he never got too high. He was never bigger than his teammates. And there's not too many stars you can say that about, very few. And, like I said, if any team had a chance to build their organization around a guy, they will model him after Tim Duncan, and they will be successful.
You said earlier that you felt like he still has more left in him in terms of he can still play. Why do you think then he retired?
Well, Tim does things his way. That's a decision that he had to make, that was best for him. I honestly think that Tim is a great father, and he loves his kids to death. And I think this is the time that he wants to give to his kids, in my honest opinion. I think he just wants to spend time with his kids and watch his kids go and spend time with them. There's nothing he can do in the game that he hasn't done. Stats say a lot about him, but it doesn't say about him as a person. He's the best human being I've met, and I just think he just wants to spend time with his kids and be the great father that he is.
You say he's the best power forward to ever play the game. Where does he rank in terms of best players in the NBA ever, in NBA history?
Well, it's hard to say. I always go by position, because different players bring different things to the game, but Tim brought more than just being the best power forward to the game. He brought a lot of guys the opportunity, helped a lot of guys get an opportunity to get a championship. Like I said, he gave a lot of guys confidence when they didn't have confidence in themselves, speaking of myself. And he also was able to show guys how to play the game and play with passion and not get too high and get too low. And like I said, the game's going to hurt right now because you don't have a guy like Tim. He's one of those stars that you can always respect that never got bigger than the game, and you got to salute him for that because he was so great.
All right, so after 19 years, five-time NBA champion Tim Duncan retires. Stephen Jackson, thank you so much for being here and sharing those stories with us so we can learn more about who he was off the court. That's always been a mystery for Big Fundamental. David, I'll send it back to you.
Okay, Carrie, let's bring in our NBA insider, Brian Windhorst, now. And, Brian, we just heard Stephen Jackson saying, he still feels like Duncan can play, takes such great care of his body. So what prompted this decision by Duncan to hang it up at the age of 40?
Well, David, only Tim Duncan really knows the answer to that, but he suffered a knee injury midway through this past season, and he never was really the same after that. He had MRIs, and the team shut him down, but they never acknowledged exactly what the injury was. He had so many knee issues in his career he was able to overcome, but watching him following that injury, he had way more nights where he was negatively affecting the team than positively, and that's a guess. There could be 10 other reasons, but that's one logical guess if you watched how this last season ended.
Hey, Brian, he's been such a rock with that team for so many years. What kind of hole does his departure leave in the fabric of this great Spurs franchise?
David, I actually think that he leaves the Spurs in a beautiful position. I don't think he could have dreamed of being able to pass this torch at this time. There were times when Greg Popovich said, as soon as Tim Duncan leaves, I'm hanging it up. We're taking the same train out of town. And Greg Popovich is not doing that because the Spurs have been able to transition. Tim Duncan took a pay cut in his last few contracts. He handed the reins over to younger players. He enabled the transition. The Spurs front office did a fantastic job getting Kawhi Leonard, and then he helped recruit Marc Gasol, and he helped recruit LaMarcus Aldridge to the team to basically recruit his replacement. So they just had the best regular season in team history with 67 wins. So certainly this is the guy who's been at the heart, the root of the entire Spurs tree. All of those executives, all of those coaches, all of those players that have gone on to be successful, at the heart is Tim Duncan. But the organization is in a beautiful place now that he's leaving. I don't think he could have dreamed of being in a better position.
We know the NBA is a players' league, and quite often the superstar player is above the coach. This symbiotic relationship between Duncan and Popovich, explain to us what it was like and what it meant for the two of them.
Well, the general manager, R.C. Buford, he's described them as soulmates. And their attitudes are so similar. They're both just completely focused on the work, not focused necessarily on the fame or the perks. They shun the attention. They both like to downplay it, and they use it to their advantage. And I think one of the greatest things that they have in common, they both have a really dry sense of humor and are self-deprecating. And Greg Popovich has said that when they go to look to bring in players, they want to make sure their sense of humor can handle what the Spurs do. And that's the basis of that is Tim Duncan. If your player, if your number one player isn't a hard worker, can't take a joke, or can't be coached, you're not going to be successful. And Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich were aligned in those categories. And more than that, they were aligned in longevity. Both of them have been able to hang in there through health scares, through challenging seasons, through terrible moments. They were all able to rise up to celebrate together. And them doing that from day one through the last day today speaks volumes in their success.
And really one of the great player-coach relationships you will ever see in the world of sports. Tim Duncan, famously reticent about doing media. What was your experience in dealing with him?
Well, you know, David, when you would ask him a question and he didn't like it, he would give you this look that would just cut right through you. It's sort of the way he looked at officials over the years when he wasn't real happy with their calls. But I'll never forget two moments with Tim Duncan. One after the Spurs lost Game 6 of the 2013 Finals, where they completely blew that game. Ray Allen hitting the three-pointer after the Spurs couldn't get some rebounds. A game where Greg Popovich didn't have Tim Duncan on the court at that vital moment. His devastation after that, I've never seen a player like that just so gutted. And then the following training camp, I came to their first day of training camp, and he openly talked about it and openly talked about how that wound was still there and how he wanted to use it as motivation. And I saw him lead the charge in leading the Spurs back to the mountaintop in beating the Heat the following year and delivering the title, and the joy that he had recovering from that terrible loss. Those two moments, he was just raw and unfiltered. And I think those were unusual moments, but I think they also showed to the media and to the fans just how much all of this meant to him.
Brian Windhorst sharing some insight into the career of Tim Duncan, hanging it up after 19 unbelievable seasons in the NBA. So good that we had this debate in the newsroom. Who had the better career, Tim Duncan or Kobe Bryant? They match up pretty similar. Two guys, obviously very different personalities, but you see they each won 5 titles. They held up all 5 fingers. Duncan, a 2-time MVP. Kobe did it once. Duncan, a 3-time NBA Finals MVP. Kobe twice. In head-to-head series in the postseason, Kobe did get the better of Duncan, 4 wins out of the 6 series. And this is Kobe today, texting this to our Mark Stein. More cutthroat than people give him credit for. I love everything about him on the court. Kobe on his longtime rival, Tim Duncan.
The San Antonio Spurs win their first ever NBA championship. Remember the Alamo. The San Antonio Spurs are NBA World Champions.
The third time in 7 seasons. 4th title in 9 years.
To think about having done this 5 times, it's amazing to be a part of this for so long.